not just for me, but I was on a conference call, a coaching call this morning with my coach, and she couldn't stream her stuff to Facebook either. So it was a little bit frustrating. Hi, Orja, good to see you on Instagram. Thanks for joining us. And it is really great to have Brenda and Jolene with us on the webinar live. Thank you for being there. I appreciate that. As we look at iridology, we're going to look at a contrast here of holistic iridology and popular iridology. Now, when I call it popular, what you see primarily on Facebook and Instagram and places like that is Jensenian, or what I call popular iridology. What I'm really going to share with you is that that it's really safe to say that the people who are practicing iridology online as Jensenian iridologists consider themselves to be holistic, but they probably aren't really, and we're going to talk about why that is in a moment. I am going to take just a moment to introduce myself for those of you who are new to me. Hi, Energy. Good to see you on Instagram. My name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, a certified iridologist, and a comprehensive certified iridology instructor. I have been a holistic health coach for 40 years. That's 4 full decades. I know I don't look a day over 29. Just kidding. And I've studied many styles of iridology over the years. We're going to be looking at a lot of eyes today. And so stay with me for this. While we're just letting people find us on Instagram and various other places, you may want to hop on over to bit.ly/3-professional secrets. If you're a herbalist, a nutritionist, a naturopath, a chiropractor, any kind of a holistic practitioner, and you're looking for ways to make your business stronger, to strengthen your client work, hop on over and grab that download. I'm giving you 3 key secrets that will help you to strengthen your business. All right, you ready to do some iridology? If you're ready, let me know. Give me a thumbs up or something. Let me know that you are ready to do some iridology with me today. Yeah? Okay, let's roll. And for those of you who are on Instagram, I will be moving my phone closer to the screen, and it'll be a little wobbly because I'll be holding it by hand, but you'll see things much more clearly the closer I am. So when I first started out doing iridology, the only chart that was available back then was this one on the bottom. This is the Jensenian Chart. And oh, Suzanne, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Yes, I remember you. How would I forget you? Okay, sorry, she's on Instagram and she's been a follower for a while. Hi, Flora, good to see you too. Thanks for joining us. So this was the very first map I ever developed, or that I ever used. Published in the 1980s here in North America by Bernard Jensen, and many iridologists whom I respect still use this chart. But as we go through this and we talk about the differences between Jensenian iridology and constitutional iridology, I want you to understand I am not dissing anybody. I'm not saying that these people are bad. I'm just saying the information they're using is outdated and has been scientifically disproved. And so we need to be moving on from that. But what I see happening when most iridologists use these kinds of charts is that they fall into the trap of what I call popular iridology. And here's what I mean by that. The challenge arises when we see that these maps subdivide the iris into teensy, weensy little sections. That when you look at an eye, if you've ever looked at an eye up close, you will know that eyes have fibers. At least blue and biliary eyes do. The dark brown eyes, you won't see the fibers. But when we look at these tiny, narrow areas, like what we see in here, some of these areas are like 2 fibers wide. So if you're not looking at this completely and totally straight on and totally balanced and vertical, you're going to misread it. You're going to misunderstand, misinterpret, and that would not be a good thing. Hi, Follow Evolution. Thanks for joining us. These maps include such minuscule organ parts is the renal pelvis, the inner ear, and that tempts iridologists to treat the body much like an allopathic physician would. So subdividing it into little pieces and prescribing treatments for that little area, not a holistic approach at all. And with iridology, we've seen people on social media offering free iris analyses, right? You've seen that, right? The really poor quality photos from an iridology perspective done with their cell phones. They might be great photos if it was vacation photo, but for the clarity and the detail we need to see, your smartphone's not going to do it. And when these people are using those poor quality photos and they're trying to laser in on an area like we see down here that is so tiny, like right in here, so tiny, how can they be exactly sure what they're looking at? Because again, being off by even a tiny amount changes the nose to the tongue, or the eye becomes the upper jaw, and that analysis is going to be very different, right? So in the early 1990s, I learned constitutional iridology, and I learned this as a truly holistic way of doing iridology. I've been doing iridology for nearly 10 years as a Jensenian iridologist. And so with that, I realized that, I'm going to flip back to this previous image, that these maps that divide things down into tiny, tiny pieces, as pretty as they are, and probably as technically accurate as they are, do not serve us when we are working holistically. So based on the iris map that I got from my constitutional teacher, I've updated his work with his blessing, and I've created the Dynamic Iridology Map. Now, this is a much more holistic map, and we're going to look at eyes using this map. Do you see that we've only included on here organs that actually, organs and tissue that has a metabolic effect on the body? We haven't included the wrist or the elbow. We haven't included the knee or the foot. We haven't included the renal pelvis because we don't have our herb that works only on the renal pelvis. We do have a herb that works on the kidney. We've got many herbs. We've got many dietary approaches. So do I need to know it's the renal pelvis? No. I need to support the entire kidney. And so, hello, Flora, good to see you. And so as we look at this, what we see is that we are going to work much more holistically, right? Rather than being distracted by every tiny, minute little detail, we are going to focus on the organ's interactions with other organs and other tissue in the body, so that we get that understanding of how this body is actually working, not how one part is working, but how the whole body is working together. We have to understand that in order to make this fly. So as a Jensenian iridologist, try to get this camera close and get you a good picture on Instagram, I would have told this person that he had congested lymphatics, that he had definitively congested lymphatics, that he needed to do a lymphatic flush, and that the markers here that suggest lymphatics would go away if he just took care of his lymphatics properly. But for all of the people that I put through cleanses, that I put through lymphatic flushes, that I put through the paces that had this type of marking, not one of them ever had these markings disappear. So that was a Jensenian analysis. Constitutional, we would say that first we look at the overall color. That teaches us about the general overarching tendencies of this body inherently, genetically. And so we know this person is prone to being over acid throughout his body, prone to being the operative word here. We know that he is prone to sluggish lymphatics. We know that he may be prone to sluggish circulation at the surface of his body. But we cannot say for sure whether he has these problems or not. Maybe he's doing everything perfectly. Maybe he's getting daily physical activity. Maybe he's cut out the dairy and the white flour and the white sugar, and he's really doing things right, and his lymphatic system is working well. This shows the inherent predisposition. It doesn't show his current situation. So we have that conversation with him to see what his symptoms are, what his diet is like, what his lifestyle is like. Because if he's figured this out already and he's doing all the right things, then he's going to experience better health. This is not going away. This is like a fingerprint. The only way we change this is if we damage the surface of the eye. This is all inherently set. If, on the other hand, he came in and he had symptoms of lymphatic issues with lymphatic swelling or circulatory issues or lowered response, those all tie into the lymphatics, we would use diet, we would use lifestyle, we would use supplements to help his body get back on track, to help him find a healthier balance. And we would see his symptoms improve. That's the important part. That he now knows what he needs to do to support his body to enjoy better health. The important part is not did his eyes change, because they won't. But the important part is now he's seen the results of better diet, better lifestyle, leading to better health. Every case I've seen of reported iris changes have used very different lighting on the before and after pictures. The camera tech for the before and after picture as compared for the pictures for before and after has been entirely different. And as every scientist knows, if you change the parameters or the variables of the experiment is null and void and your results are garbage, right? And so if we're going to have before and after pictures, we have to use the same camera, on the same settings for f-stop, for shutter speed, for ISO. We have to have the same lighting source and the same amount of light on the eye in order to do a valid before and after comparison. And then we have to do that comparison on one computer screen with them side by side, because even computer screens change how the eyes look. They change the colors. And I mean, you can monkey with that all you want, and you can really change how eyes look. So there are certainly more indicators in this iris than just lymphatics, and we're not going to talk about all of them today. Let's look at another eye instead. A Jensenian iridologist would say this person was toxic and needed some deep cleansing, and that these eyes would become blue. Now, again, for all the cleansings, all the fasts, all the special diets, all the supplements that I've recommended to clients, and I know they followed through, I heard all the complaining and grumbling as they were initiating the changes, so I know they were doing the hard work. I've never seen an eye change. I've never seen an eye that was like this become blue, ever. I've never even seen the pigments lighten up. What we know now from research is pigment, and all of this in here is pigment, builds, it does not disperse, so it's acquired, and it's inherent. And even the acquisition of the pigment is inherent. It is not the result of, oh my goodness, toxic exposure, right? Or antibiotic use or things like that. It is inherent. Just as there is inherent programming that said my hair would start to go gray at a certain time, and I have some control over that with my nutrition. Our eyes have programs of how and when pigment will manifest, and we may be able to delay the onset of that by better nutrition, but we cannot stop it. Each of the base colors we see in an eye, whether it's blue or brown, or what we consider a biliary base like this, has an inherent set of health traits and health risks. Now, these are only predispositions. They are not guarantees of a problem. So, in constitutional iridology, this iris has inherent predispositions to liver insufficiencies and some high acid predispositions as well. We cannot diagnose a disease from this. We only know what the overarching tendency is. So we want to then ask liver-oriented questions. We want to find out how well did they digest their fat? How's their immune? Because liver plays a huge role in that. How is their blood panel? What's their lipid panel like? Do they have cholesterol and triglyceride issues? Those are liver. There are many things that the liver does. And as we ask the liver questions, we begin to be able to clarify what their challenges might be. But these eyes are not going to turn blue, regardless of what we do. This, try to get a really good image here for you. Hard to do, but trying. And part of this because of the light in my room. Understanding this alone lays the foundation for understanding everything else we see in an iris and gives us greater insight into the client's health and predispositions. Now, this eye, again, suggests a very strong predisposition to liver and possibly blood. As it turns out, this woman likely has a liver predisposition that leads to her inability to methylate her B vitamins. Now, if you've studied methylation, you'll know that people that have this problem can end up very toxic if their folic acid and their B12 are not properly methylated. And they can also end up toxic if we give them too much of the methylated ones. So we need to balance that carefully. Her eyes didn't give me all of that detail, but having a conversation with her in light of what her eyes look like led to that endpoint, because she and her husband had been trying to conceive for 3 years. When we gave her the methylated Bs, and this isn't an answer for all types of infertility by any stretch of the imagination, but when we gave her the methylated Bs, because I suspected she did not methylate her Bs properly, after 3 years of trying to conceive, we gave her the methylated Bs. That's when she came to me, and she conceived, right? And she had a beautiful baby boy. Now, a Jensenian iridologist would say that this woman has current liver issues, just like we're seeing here with the brown, but they would say that those issues were current. They would say that every one of these black lines radiating out is a current health problem. Every one of these lines coming around is a current stress on the body. This slightly white arc at the top is a current problem. Out of all of that, the only one of those that is definitively a current issue is this white haze at the top of her eye. If we had only given her basic standard liver supplements like milk thistle or a dandelion blend or anything like that, it's highly unlikely she would still not have conceived, because they do not address the methylation issue. Constitutional iridology is a holistic assessment tool, and it requires a conversation with the client, which is why these online assessments are not good. The person who posts their eye photos gives a short 3 sentences, if that, of what their health problems are, and the other person has the assessor, the analyst, the iridologist, doesn't have a conversation. Hi, Pure Wholesome, good to see you. Thanks for being there. Now we're going to consider some color variations, and this is going to be a little harder for you to see if you're on Instagram, but I'll do my best to highlight this for you. When we look at this eye, we see these little flecks of color. Can you see these on Instagram? They're not hugely prominent on my cell phone, but you can see them a little bit here. So these little flecks of color, a North American iridologist would say this person was toxic. These are indications of toxins, probably drugs or heavy metals. This person needs to be cleansed. And if you do the cleanse, these pigments are going to disappear. Constitutional has a different approach, one that is accurate. And that is that these are inherent. These colors, these little bits of color in here are inherent. And even if they appeared later in life, that is going to give us some specific information about this person's inherent health potentials. And again, since color reproduction on screens is variable, these could look orange on your screen. They could look brown, they might look rust. I'm not going to suggest what the meaning is because each of those colors has a different meaning. What we know is the color tells us which organ is wanting to inflict stress, is out of balance and wanting to create stress. Where that pigment is sitting tells us which organ is going to receive the brunt of that stress. So which organ is going to struggle the most because the first organ was out of balance. This, of course, gives us huge insight, helps us to understand tremendously what's going on in the body, and especially when we have that conversation with our clients. A North American iridologist, again, would say this eye belongs to an extremely toxic person, and they would need a massive amount of cleansing. That seems to be the common theme with most Jensenian iridologists. That these rings mean this person has a large amount of stress, and because of the number of rings, this person is either heading into or coming out of a nervous breakdown. How'd you like to hear that from your herbalist or your nutritionist? The white at the outer edge would mean a cholesterol, would mean the risk of cholesterol blockages in the body from a sodium imbalance. Hence, they would call this a sodium cholesterol ring. In constitutional iridology instead, the colors here again, as you've probably picked up already, are going to suggest a strong predisposition towards the liver being insufficient and maybe even the pancreas a little bit. And these contraction furrows, we call these contraction furrows, they don't tell us this person is under a lot of stress right now. They tell us this person spends most of their time responding from their sympathetic nervous system, which means they're always ready for the next bomb to go off, the next shoe to drop, the next crisis to fall, however you want to term that. But these also suggest this person's a go-getter, that this is someone who likes to achieve things. They make to-do lists. They like to achieve their goals. They're not a couch potato. They are very actively pursuing things in life. The white margin suggests a liver imbalance as it relates to the way the liver processes carbohydrates. And so when we see that, then we're going to need to have a conversation with the client about liver symptoms, how they handle, we're going to have a conversation about how they actually do handle their stress. What does she do to mitigate that stress? We want to know, how does she handle her carbs? Does she get into carbohydrate cravings? Has she been diagnosed with elevated cholesterol or triglycerides? She may be doing everything that's right. This might be something that she formed a while back. This is actually not a true iris sign. It's in the sclera. It has nothing to do really with genetics, except that there's a liver predisposition behind it. Only when we have a conversation with the client to understand their current symptoms and their past history can we fully understand the markings and make cogent recommendations. This is so important. A North American iridologist would look at all of these lines radiating outwards and say, oh my goodness, you're full of parasites. And I gotta say, not right, totally not right. The eyes reflect, the iris itself reflects our genetic potential, right? It doesn't reflect things that are non-genetic. Parasites are non-genetic. Parasites are not going to change your genetic structure. If you have parasites, you're not going to pass on the DNA for parasites to your children. And so the only way that we would see parasites, indications of parasites in the eye, is if the person actually had a parasite in their eye, just in the surface that we could see in the sclera. And of course, those do exist, but that's not even going to change your genetic structure. Constitutional iridology says this person is, again, very prone to responding from their sympathetic nervous system. And these lines that radiate out magnify that predisposition. So if this person has a really intense lifestyle, he or she will benefit greatly by supporting the adrenal glands, getting adequate rest, having some relaxation in their day. The important thing to remember, though, is that every client doesn't need to hear every recommendation that could go with everything you see in their eyes. Really, your clients only need to hear enough to get them to the next step in their health. enough to resolve their current symptom. And that's a beautiful thing about constitutional iridology, where old school Jensenian North American iridology says give them everything you see and overwhelm them so that they don't know where to start or how to implement what you've taught them. Constitutional says understand what's going on in their body based on what you see in the eye and based on the conversation you're having with the client. Understand what the client's goals are. When you understand what the client's goals are and you assess their eyes based on that and based on the conversation you have with them, you can give them the right amount of information to have them achieve that next level of health, overwhelmed, and have massive success. So tell me, if you're a practitioner and you give your client the right amount of information to help them achieve what they want, how are they going to feel about you? What is the likelihood they're going to want to come back to work on the next issue they have, right? Because you understood where they were starting from, where they wanted to go, and you clearly understood the pathway to help them get there. The next layer of information that we consider is the fiber structure. This layer of information adds to our understanding of organ systems and, again, the inherent predispositions for this body. Now, North American iridology would map out every single one of these on their map that has those skinny little zones on it, and they would give the client information about every single one of these areas. They teach that every one of these areas, which they call lesions, I dislike that word, means there's a problem happening right now. So this person, based on where the lesions are, has issues with their brain, pituitary, bronchioles, adrenals, kidneys, perineum, rectum, bronchus, and parathyroid. A Jensenian iridology also teaches that when you do the right things, these lesions will go away. Don't you just love that word lesion? I always think of cancer when I think of lesions. And I don't want to do anything that emotionally charges my clients like that. In constitutional iridology, these are called lacunae. A lacuna is simply an open space. No emotion behind that. When we see this many lacunae in one eye, we know that this person is more prone to having issues with imbalances with their endocrine system, particularly the adrenals and the pituitary. So we also need to remember that these markings are inherited. They are passed down from the past 3 to 4 generations. So we have to have that conversation with the client. Do you have a personal or family history of issues in this area of these kinds of symptoms? Maybe these people have been passing down not just these markings, but information about how to feel better. And so maybe this person is doing the right things. So if they are, and they still have, they've got these, which are not going to disappear, but they're doing the right things, they may be able to prevent problems from developing in those areas. And that is our ultimate goal, right? Is prevention. Remediation first and prevention second. In North America, every marker, every fiber that's not going in the right direction is a current problem that needs to be addressed. So when we look at this eye, and we see as we come around here, can you see on Instagram that we've got a fiber coming down here? It's running across other fibers, and we have another one of them right here that is running across other fibers. And on the webinar, can you see this as well? Here we've got some more fibers that are running off across others. Up here we have yet another one. Okay, so these would also indicate some intense things if you were Jensenian, and these pigments would also suggest some things. With holistic iridology, the whole purpose here, the whole goal is to integrate the markings to understand how those inherent predispositions actually work together, right? What kind of a story are these markings telling us? How are they playing off each other? What is this client doing then for their wellness? When we have that deeper understanding of how these markings play off each other, we then also have a deeper understanding of the recommendations we need to make and a deeper understanding of how to create a program that our client could actually stick with and have success with. Again, a North American iridologist would say this person has a weak constitution. How would you like to hear that? You have a weak constitution. Well, what are you going to do about it exactly? Right? That's like saying, you know, your car is rusted out. What are you going to do about it? It makes it sound like this person is delicate and fragile and doomed to a forever sickly life. In constitutional, we call this connective tissue type. With this understanding, we know that this person will likely need support with digestion. We might need to recommend some lifestyle and food choices to help this person enjoy excellent health. We know that this person might be prone to things like strains and sprains, that their joints might be a little unstable. And so we can coach them with that and suggest they work with a physiotherapist or a personal trainer to make sure that they're exercising properly. We can do all kinds of things, referring them out if we don't have the right skills to help them complement what they're doing with their diet and their lifestyle. We take a step back when we're doing constitutional iridology to look at the big picture, to understand how everything plays together. What are the pieces of this puzzle? And how will that impact what we teach our client? When we do holistic iridology, using the map is actually the very last step of an iris assessment. Sometimes I don't use the map at all. Sometimes I see enough looking at the colors, looking at the fiber structure, looking at pigment and things like that, that I don't actually need to go into a map at all. Because the colors and the lay of the fibers and all that gives us so much information about the overarching chemistry, inherent chemistry of the body. We can always go back to the map later if we need to, right? Really, when we understand iridology in this way, you can do a basic assessment from 2 feet away without any special equipment. But if you wanted to ramp it up 1 level, you would simply go to something like this, a handheld lighted magnifying glass. And then if you wanted to get super professional, you can buy the right equipment for that. But practicing iridology using these principles helps us to avoid overwhelming our clients with too much information in each appointment. It helps us to avoid diagnosing. It helps us to avoid prescribing, because now we're making dietary recommendations to bring the body into a better balance. Constitutional iridology helps us to get our client programs designed right in our client sessions. If you're a nutritionist, do you actually spend time outside of your sessions creating detailed client reports? Yeah, not a great way to spend your time, because those reports probably overwhelm your clients. Constitutional iridology guides us in our questions that we need to ask our clients, and it helps us to be much more holistic in our methods with our clients. So with your permission, I just want to throw in a brief introduction to the course that's coming up. Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is a live online mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. This is so important, and it's going to help you as a practitioner stop doing your unpaid overtime to create client programs. It'll help you to stop overwhelming your clients with too much information. It will help you to create programs that are actually doable, where your clients can improve their compliance, their success, and the long-term retention. I'm doing an info session on this particular course on Thursday, August 27th at 5 o'clock Mountain Daylight Time. If you'd like to get registered for that, you can hop on over to iridology.education/webinar. So I'm inviting you to join me for that. I'm just going to do a quick copy paste to drop that into the chat box for those of you who are on the webinar with me. And there we go, so that you've got it. There you go. And I'm inviting you to join me for this to learn more about how iridology can help you in your practice, how it can benefit you, how it can benefit your clients. And in this webinar on the 27th, I'll give you all of the registration details. So if you are a herbalist, a nutrition coach, a naturopath, I hope you'll join me for the webinar. And I'm just wondering if anyone has got any questions about anything we talked about today. We'll give you just a minute to get into that. Iridology is really a skill that changed the way I do my business. When I practiced Jensenian Iridology, I absolutely spent hours creating even Jensenian Iridology reports, creating nutrition reports for my clients. And it really was challenging. As I learned Constitutional Iridology and how to implement it correctly, it changed everything, because now I create all of my programs while I'm with my client in that paid session, and I don't do any more homework, no more free, no more donating my time. And that is magnificent, because it means I'm not overwhelming my clients. It means I'm not spending time that I'm not getting paid for. And that has been a tremendous asset for both my clients and myself. I am not seeing any questions come in. So hopefully that means I did a great job and I answered questions as we were on the fly for you. And I look forward to seeing you in the webinar on August 27th. Bye for now.